I own a 60-acre vineyard that my grandfather planted nearly 50 years ago. Every row of grapes tells a story of hard work, patience, and family tradition. My land sits beside an upscale neighborhood, but it has never been part of their HOA. I thought everyone understood that, until one unforgettable morning. As I drove toward the eastern vineyard gate, I noticed two black SUVs parked inside my property. At first, I assumed they belonged to utility workers. But as I got closer, I saw men wearing black vests marked HOA enforcement, walking through my grape rows with clipboards in their hands. One officer looked up and confidently announced that they were conducting an HOA property inspection. He claimed several landscaping violations had been reported and said I needed to cooperate immediately. I looked around, smiled politely, and asked a simple question. Can you show me where my property is listed in your HOA? The officers exchanged confused looks before checking their paperwork again. One pointed toward the neighboring subdivision and insisted that every property beyond the main entrance belonged to the HOA. I quietly explained that my vineyard had existed decades before the neighborhood was ever built. Instead of leaving, the officers continued walking deeper into my vineyard, taking photographs and writing notes. They even discussed possible fines for unapproved agricultural activity. I realized they truly believed they had authority over land they had never bothered to verify. I politely asked the officers who had authorized their inspection. One of them confidently mentioned HOA President Karen Collins and said she personally ordered them to document every violation. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a simple mistake. It was a deliberate overreach. A few minutes later, Karen Collins arrived in a luxury white SUV, wearing designer sunglasses and a confident smile. Without introducing herself, she informed me that my vineyard was damaging the neighborhood's appearance. She demanded I remove several rows of grapevines closest to the subdivision fence. I calmly explained that every vine had been planted years before her neighborhood even existed. Karen interrupted me and claimed the HOA board had voted to beautify the area. She insisted their decision applied to everyone nearby, whether they agreed or not. Instead of arguing, I quietly walked back to my pickup truck and retrieved a weathered folder containing property deeds, county survey maps, and original land records. Karen laughed and said old paperwork wouldn't stop HOA enforcement. She had no idea what those documents actually proved. I handed Karen a certified county survey, showing my vineyard sat completely outside HOA boundaries. Her smile disappeared almost instantly. Even the enforcement officers stopped writing and began reading the survey with confused expressions. Karen insisted the county survey had to be outdated and claimed her HOA attorney would prove me wrong. I simply nodded and suggested she verify the records before making any more demands. The officer suddenly looked much less certain than before. Before leaving, Karen ordered her officers to finish documenting every inch of my vineyard anyway. They reluctantly continued taking photographs, but their confidence had faded. I quietly recorded the entire interaction on my phone for my own records. That afternoon, I visited the county planning office with copies of every document. The staff immediately recognized my property's history and confirmed that my vineyard had never been included in any homeowners association. Their confirmation would soon change everything. The county surveyor smiled and explained that similar boundary disputes happen more often than people realized. He printed certified copies of the official maps and encouraged me to keep them close. I thanked him and drove home feeling much more prepared. The next morning, another black SUV appeared outside my vineyard gate. This time, however, the visitors weren't HOA officers. They were county officials responding to questions about unauthorized inspections. Karen had unknowingly invited the wrong people into the situation. The HOA officers radioed their supervisor, insisting the entire vineyard belonged to their community. I calmly walked to an old steel post and pointed at the original county boundary marker. The officers laughed, saying markers could be moved. I smiled and told them the county survey records would settle it in minutes. Within 20 minutes, 2 county surveyors arrived carrying tripods and GPS equipment. They ignored the HOA officers completely and began checking official coordinates. The confidence on the officers' faces slowly disappeared as every measurement confirmed my property lines. The lead surveyor unfolded the official county plat map across the hood of his truck. He traced the property boundary with his finger before looking directly at the HOA officers. "This vineyard has never been inside your HOA," he said. Silence spread across the road. One HOA officer quietly lowered his clipboard, while another removed a violation notice from my vineyard gate. They finally understood they had no legal authority here. Their confident attitude vanished as neighbors watched from nearby roads. Just when they thought they could leave quietly, a county code enforcement truck pulled onto the dirt road. The inspector asked one simple question: who authorized HOA enforcement outside its jurisdiction? No one answered. The county inspector requested every document the HOA officers had brought with them. Their folders contained citations, warning notices, and inspection reports, all written for property they didn't control. The inspector quietly began taking photographs of each document. The inspector explained that filing official-looking enforcement notices outside HOA authority could create serious legal consequences. The officers exchanged worried glances. For the first time all day, they had nothing to argue about. One of the officers admitted they had relied only on an HOA map printed years ago. The county surveyor shook his head and handed over the updated records. Every official document proved the vineyard had always been outside the neighborhood. Several neighboring farmers gathered along the roadside, quietly watching everything unfold. Many had received similar HOA warnings over the years. They finally realized those notices had never carried any authority. As the sun dipped behind the vineyard hills, the HOA officers packed their equipment without another word.